said, okay, I didn't want to be a firefighter. You're in it for 2-3 years, and you end up at 50 in 5 days. What along the journey kept you in? I mean, you got 4 years to make a change. Mm-hmm. What's your first 100 days look like?
The first 30 days is going to be, I want my kids to, be sitting here, 30, 40 years from now saying, I love St. Pete, here's why, and.
Let's say, Jim, you're elected mayor.
Mm-hmm.
What would you have liked to see? What was the changes that you've made?
I would like to see that we've made a difference in the. I think it's time that we really sit down with the different mayors and different administrations of cities and come up with a plan for the state of Florida that can be a resource deployment plan.
What does the city need?
In my opinion, it needs leadership. Okay, and what I mean by that.
Hello, you beautiful people. Welcome back to Talkin St. Pete. I'm your host, Ryan Bogden. This is the podcast where we talk about all the amazing things that make St. Petersburg, Florida, an amazing city to live, work, and play. We've had numerous guests on from business owners, artists, city officials, and now we're getting into a little bit of a mayor series with candidates that are running for mayor. We've had the previous mayor on, and today I'm very excited to introduce Jim Large, former fire chief and firefighter for St. Petersburg for many, many years, and now running for mayor of the city. And I'm so grateful to have you here today and learn more about one, the rich history that you know about, because I'm sure you know the city inside and out better than most, right. And what made you decide to run for mayor? Those are topics we're going to cover today.
Excellent. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for coming. We got to meet, was it last week or 2 weeks ago? At the Art Alliance event. Mm-hmm. What was the name of that brewery we were at? Do you remember?
The Bayboro
Brewery. Yes. And I thought you did a great job.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
On the open mic. Mm-hmm. Yes. So, Jim, you were fire chief for what? How many years? 18 years as fire chief. You put
Correct.
50 years in for the city so far.
Well, actually, it's 50 years and 5 days.
50 years and 5 days, right. You wanted to make sure you got officially over the hump of 50.
The 50th anniversary fell on a Sunday, and I wanted to leave on a Friday.
Well, that shows a lot about your character and what you've done. So before we get into all the mayor stuff, because I think that's going to be fascinating to find out, but let's rewind a little bit. Let's go back 50 years ago. Well, it's more than 50 years now, but you retired at 50. But let's go back to when you first started as a firefighter for the city. What was the landscape? What did things look like?
Wow. So it was much different, obviously. And let me just preface, I didn't grow up wanting to be a firefighter. That's the interesting part. I wanted to be a police officer, but they weren't hiring 18-year-olds. Oh. So they had lowered the age for the fire department to 18, and I was the second 18-year-old hired. And I figured I'd do 3 years and then switch over to police department. Well, fell in love with it, so I didn't want to switch. So that's how I got started. Never dreamed I'd be a firefighter, growing up. Never dreamed I'd put 50 years in, that's for sure. But, this was predominantly, back then, they called it a bedroom community. We didn't have a lot of high-rises. We had a lot of frame structures, two-bedroom type, it was known as a retirement community. Actually, that's how we ended up here. My dad retired when I was only 9, and we were in the tip of the UP, and it was very, very cold. And he said, we're going somewhere warm, so we came to St. Pete. And it was much slower, if that's, and we had a lot more fires just because back then we had a lot of frame structures. Everything had fuel oil furnace. Central air wasn't real prominent, central air and heat. And so you'd have your cold snaps and it'd be the first time people fired up their heaters and they haven't been properly maintained or checked before. We just seemed to have a lot more fires back then. Not necessarily,
So I don't know if this is accurate, but I did some digging and it said when you started, there was maybe 5,000 calls a year.
Yes, that's correct.
And when you went out, there was 65,000 calls a year.
Yes.
So over a 10x jump in the amount of calls.
Yes. So, what's interesting about that is my first year, we introduced advanced life support in the fire service. Basically, we were like a first aid cars. We had 4 the St. Pete Fire Department had 4 rescue cars, basically could give you oxygen, put Band-Aids on. They couldn't do much else. So they started a program in October of '74 called a Fire Medic Program. And so they sent the first group to school, and they bought the first couple of rescue trucks. They weren't transport capable. They were just equipment, reading body, almost like a utility truck. And we put the first fire medics. We had a medical director working at Bayfront ER. And so we started in the EMS field. Because why that's important, that 65,000 when I retired, 90% were EMS calls. So fires have gone down, and EMS calls have
gone up. Well, the population, more people.
Oh yeah, and it's just that emergency service that you get, at your doorstep.
Right.
Our goal is, I say the fire department's goal was my goal for many years. Stabilize you to get you transported to the ER where they can continue the care. So that call volume really is tied to, I think, what was kicked off October 1974.
That's wild. It makes sense a lot, why there was more fires back then, because I think about being in the business of real estate. I have a lot of people ask me, why is there a chimney on the house? I didn't even see anything because it's obviously all built around or hidden now inside, but the chimney's still on the roof.
Yeah, because they took out the furnace.
They took out the furnace.
Yeah,
sure. And that's what caused a lot of these fires.
Oh yeah, it was every winter you could count on some, whether they got rusted out, the flue, and the heat transferred out into the attic space or something like that and started it. There was all kinds of things tied to them. But, construction materials, code features, everything that's evolved and changed has also had a big impact on fires. These buildings, we've torn down buildings that were 2- and 3-story wood frame that were actually more hazardous than some of our 20- and 30-story buildings because of the features that we have built in now through the codes. It makes it much more safer for us as firefighters. And a lot of times it's a cleanup because sprinkler systems, required anything over 75 feet. So sprinklers put out the bulk of fires that happen, and they're usually confined to one head, maybe 2 at most. So you have a little bit of water cleanup, things like that, but a lot of property salvaged or saved by sprinkler systems. So things like that have evolved in the code over the years, and of course, the fire department here and everywhere enforces the code, and it's made a big difference. We have elevator control. We have pressurized stairwells to keep the smoke out so people can go down the stairwells. We have the non-flammable materials, and, of course, back to sprinkler system, early notification, early intervention, we call it, smoke alarms, so early warning for the occupants besides the early notification to the fire department.
So you've watched a lot of change.
A lot of change.
A lot of change. Did you? So how did you end up? So I'm just curious. You say, okay, I didn't want to be a firefighter. You're in it for 2-3 years, and you end up at 50 in 5 days. What along the journey kept you in?
What I found, number one, growing up, I was always kind of involved in team activities, okay? So thinking I wanted to be a police officer, and then I did know some guys that were several years ahead of me that we'd played football, and they got on the police department. And once they got out of their training, they're in a car by themselves. I got to be around people. That's just the way I am. So the team concept really came out big time in my fire academy training. You rely, there's a lot to it, and you rely on each other. So that was the first part that early on I said, oh, this is what I want to do. I like the team concept. But the second part of that is once I got through my training and I got out into companies, when you have something positive happen because of your actions, the feeling, that reward that you get from that, whether it's a medical call, whether it's a fire, you rescued the cat, you rescued somebody, and they're still, alive to thank you, or their property's majority of it saved. You've had that early intervention. That gave me a feeling of reward that I don't know how to describe it, but it's a success that you're just like, wow, this is really cool. I can do this, and that's kind of where I ended up, and then from there I just dove in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what I'm hearing, it sounds like not, I won't call it the chase, but a little bit the chase of the reward, right, and the immediate gratification of helping people and seeing it firsthand. It kind of kept you locked in and wanting to be able to do more.
Sure, absolutely. That and that's it. Public service is you don't see a lot of millionaires walking around that are doing public service. You know what I mean? Because that's not what it's about. It's not about getting the money, but public service is about the rewards of making a difference. We talked about that earlier today in another meeting I was in about how do you measure success. That was one of the questions, and it's not about what you have and everything. It's about what you've done. Where have you made a difference? I use this example many times in the campaign when I've been asked different things, but I have witnessed it personally and for others as well. When you go to someone on the EMS side that has no pulse, no respirations, clinically dead, and 2 weeks later they walk into the station to say thank you because of the actions that you took as a team, because it's not it's a team effort.
Yeah, right.
I mean, you just can't put a price on that.
No, definitely not.
It is. And, there's failures because you do everything you can and it still turns out bad. Mm-hmm. But one of those just,
yeah, no.
I'm back at it. I'm back at it.
It's I can't imagine what that feeling's like. I have a great uncle that was a police officer for a while, and one of my great friends from the military is a police officer now in Texas, and I've heard many stories, and I'm like, man, the things that, and I'm prior military, but the things that police officers, firefighters deal with on a daily basis, mm-hmm. and then have to go home to their families, it is pretty wild. So thank you for all that. I just wanted to say thank you.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you. It was my honor. To be able to serve, like I say, it's a privilege.
Yeah, you were saying about success. Today being my birthday, I was doing a little reflection in my journals, and we had an agent who had passed here a few years ago from a brain tumor, and I wrote about that, and we had a pastor here, and he said, you're not remembered at your funeral by what car you drove, right. but how you made people feel. Mm-hmm. And that really stuck with me. And so to the point, right? Like it's mm-hmm. It's not about the money, but it's all the impact that you make.
Yeah, there's a lot of sayings like that, mm-hmm. and you hear about what was your dash like on your in your tombstone. What'd you do with your dash? Mm-hmm. And that's really it. Why are we here? Make a difference.
Yeah.
I had another incident today talking about success, and I brag a little bit on this because. How do you measure it? So my daughter, I told this story earlier too, because I got the text this morning. She texted me to say, I had a patient today who asked me if I was related to the guy that's running for mayor because they see my signs all over the city. And she said, yeah, that's my dad. And the patient said, well, if he's anything like you are, then he's done a really good job and he has our support. That's success.
That is success.
Yeah. So that touched me, and that meant a lot.
I'm sure that meant a lot.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. So let's transition to that a little bit, Jim. So talking about public service, you've now thrown your hat in the ring to run for mayor.
Yep.
Which I think is absolutely crazy.
Mm-hmm. You're not the only one to say that. No,
Yeah. Just from the little bit that I've done, I'm really curious. So, and this is and take me to the moment, right? I think this is a question. There's one thing. You're not a politician. You're not a business. You're real public service. So I know you can answer this question. Mm-hmm. When and where was the moment that the idea crossed your mind and it struck that you're going to run for mayor?
Is there one specific moment? That's a tough one because I'll go back when I had about 35 years on. Actually 32 years, I was thinking, okay, I'll be retiring soon, and I think I want to run for city council, okay? And then I was appointed fire chief, and I thought, okay, told my wife, typically a fire chief changes when a new mayor comes in, so I'm good until this mayor's term is up. And where I'm going with this is I never dreamed I'd do 18 years as a fire chief. Mm-hmm. I never dreamed I'd do 50 years on the job. So the new mayor came in and said, will you stay? I stayed. I said, hey, hon, I got 4 more years. And then the new mayor came in, will you stay? Hey, I got 4 more years. And it ended up being 8. And then Ken was elected, and we discussed what my plans were, and I said, I'm going to leave at 50. I'm not going to. You'll be making the next fire chief. So we had that discussion. And so I had kind of written off running for council, which ultimately I thought would turn into mayor. So it kind of just died down, and I thought. But then I started getting phone calls once I announced my retirement from friends of mine saying, have you considered running for mayor? Now, the reasoning being there's some, they were unhappy or whatever. But I said, well, at this point, I don't know. But I definitely see that we need to get somebody, So I talked to some younger people, and they're just like I was. They had kids, they have responsibilities, they have things that keep them from being able to make that commitment. And for a lot of people, it's a significant cut in pay if they're very successful and everything. It's still, I think the pay is not an issue, but the pay is very, very good for the city mayor. So money's never an issue. But for them to take a cut in pay could be tough, with a young family and everything. And so I couldn't find anybody that was really willing to step up at this time. And so I decided, you know what, I have the time. I have the experience. There's none of the 6 candidates that have had 18 years of executive leadership within the city of St. Pete, knowing the government, knowing the players, knowing the processes, knowing the rules and regs, knowing everything about it. And I said, why not? And then when Helene and Milton, back-to-back, catastrophic storms hit, I was actually in Newport, Rhode Island on vacation with my wife when Helene hit. And I was getting text messages from the EOC, our Emergency Operations Center here. And then I shortly after all those, I started getting more people reaching out saying, hey, what are you thinking? What are you going to do? And I said, okay, I'm throwing my hat in the ring. I want to try to make a difference, for these people that have been hit. As the current mayor.
So it was during the storms?
It was right after the storms.
That you said, okay, you know what? I understand all the things leading up to it.
Right. That was the final.
But that was the one that was the tipping point?
That was the tipping point in that, the hat I wore besides being fire chief was emergency manager. I was in every EOC, that activated actually from 1991 until 2024, every storm, because I was assistant chief starting in 91, and so I had a role in the EOC. So I've been in every activation. So you wear the hat of emergency manager as the fire chief and for the city. And I felt like, I have the experience to oversee that.
Yeah, so let's go to that for a minute. So you decide, right, because essentially at that time, the mayor's your boss, right? And so now you're...
Well, no, I had retired.
Okay, you're already retired. But
I was in Newport, already retired when Helene hit.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
But now, so you're now running against your former boss.
Yes.
What's that like?
Well,
have you been asked this question already?
No. Well, no, I don't think I have actually.
Like now we're just. Yeah. I'm just curious. It's, the thought process. It's like that.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with him being my former boss. I think it's just a perspective on what I think the city needs versus what he thinks the city needs, and what the other 4 candidates think the city needs.
So, what does the city need?
In my opinion, it needs leadership. Okay, and what I mean by that, years ago, I forget the exact year, we were a city manager form of government, and there was a referendum. It was a controversy between the police department and a acting city manager, resulted in police chief getting fired, all kinds of, there were some racial indications there. Anyway, there was a movement to change to a strong mayor form of government, and then the goal of that movement was to elect the terminated police chief as the next mayor. Well, they got the change in the government, but they didn't get the police chief as the mayor. So we went to a strong mayor form of government, and what I've seen working under the 4 mayors is a slow, gradual buildup of politics at City Hall. Just be very blunt, politics. I don't think at the local level, this is my strong belief, there's a place for politics at City Hall. I believe there's a place for service at City Hall, and what I mean by that is core services have been neglected. Our infrastructure's been neglected. Now we're looking at floating a $600 million GO bond that we're going to increase taxes, all those things, to try to address some of the infrastructure. Meanwhile, it doesn't address what's in this bond, the streets that we drive on every day. They're terrible. They've been neglected. We've had tremendous growth on the surface, but we've ignored below the surface and at the surface, if that makes sense. So my feeling is that that road you drive on doesn't care if you're a D and R and independent, doesn't care whether you're black or white, doesn't care whether you're gay or straight. None of that matters. But a lot of that is tied to political agendas, ideologies, things like that. We have to get away from that at the local level, spend the taxpayers' dollars on the things that benefit everybody in the city. So it's kind of just a basic foundational principle that City Hall's goal is to provide core services fairly, equally, and respectfully.
Okay. All right. I'm following you on this.
Okay.
So, the political game. What a crazy world, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure you're experiencing that entering this race here a little bit.
Yes. I've had several people, when I say I'm not a politician, they say, well, you're trying to become one. If I don't prevail, I'm not going to seek office anywhere else. This is all about the city of St. Pete and what it's done for me in my 50 years, raising my family here, the opportunities it's provided, this city, the friendships, the rewards. I want my children, your children, everybody's children, grandchildren to have those same opportunities. I don't want to see them disappear. Now, there's changes in our culture that we've seen, generational changes, what they expect. Trying to find that balance, that's a hard one. You have your people like me that have been here a long time. We have a perspective of what we think St. Pete should be, the character, all that. And yet you have a younger generation that doesn't know that. Like you were asking me, how was it? What's the changes I've seen? So what they expect and what they're fine with is much different. So you have to find a way to balance that out. You need to maintain the character of the city, but you can't not, still have appeal to all generations, if it would. But anyway,
No. I can see, I can appreciate that perspective on it because I think everyone does immediately want to go to politics, even though the mayor is it's a bipartisan.
Well, it's a nonpartisan race for a reason,
right.
And yet it's made very partisan.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to know where. I've been asked, "What are you registered as?" I've been asked all those questions, and the first thing I say before I answer the question, because I'll tell everybody, I'm going to be straight up about everything. It's a nonpartisan race for a reason, and I'm not a politician.
Yeah. So let's think about. There's a lot of areas I want to go to, but just curious from your perspective. Okay, coming in, wanting to put all the politics aside, infrastructure is a thing that always comes up in the city.
Absolutely.
First, you got 4 years to make a change. What's your first 100 days look like?
So I did a first 90-day plan.
Yeah, well, I added 10.
Yeah, on my website. And it's more about, the first 30 days is going to be very busy, identifying things, researching, diving in. One of the things that you see, and I actually released a reel today talking about promises on the political trail. You won't find any record of me making a promise on the political trail because you can't make a promise that you don't even know for sure how you're, I'm committed to try to fix the permitting department. Absolutely. I'm committed to start working on the streets, but I don't know which street's the worst yet. I don't know where the worst sewer system is. We got to coordinate all that. So the first 30 days is getting all the right people together, start pulling all that detail together. Then the other part, as a leader, you got to make sure you have the right people in the right place to help you. Leaders don't have all the answers. They got to have
the right team.
Right team. We'll work through that, and then at the end of the 90 days or the end of the 60 days, you start putting out the plans and the implementation and how you're going to go about it. But you've got to jump right in. And here's the thing: the election's in November. So when does the first 90 days start? For me, it starts the day after the election.
Right. Yeah. Why? What are you waiting for?
No. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. So but let's go for. So let's say, Jim, you're elected mayor. You're sworn in January 2027. You and I are getting to sit down in 2031.
I have been asked this one, I think. Go ahead.
What would you have liked to see? What was the changes that you've made?
Yeah. So I would like to see that we've made a difference in the streets that we drive on, in the infrastructure. I'd like to see that we're a very safe city, that we've addressed some of the issues that people are concerned about. The crime side. Crime is down, we're told. Yet on the street, I had an email this morning from a lady. She begging if I get in to do something about her neighborhood. The crime is terrible in her neighborhood, and she says police are looking the other way. Well, there's two sides to everything. I certainly, you have to respect how she's feeling, but at the same time, I know we have a lot of good people on St. Pete PD. I know a lot of them. Are they being allowed to enforce the law the way it's supposed to be? Are we looking the other way? There's questions I don't know yet. But anyway, back to your question, I want to make sure that our city's safe. That includes the homelessness issue. People feel threatened by that at times. When you're sitting, and I don't know where we are, I just know it looks like we're not doing anything about it. That's a problem. There's not communication if there is anything being done about it. So I would like to have a really clear established at the end of it. Well, St. Pete has Houston's recognized as one of the places that's really handled homelessness well. They've reduced it by something like, I think 40%, or it might be flipped the other way. I don't remember, but that's a place to look at. So I'd like to have that where people say St. Pete has a great homeless. You're not going to eliminate homelessness. You're just not.
Yeah, but there should be a plan. What's the plan?
Yeah, you can't ignore it.
Right.
And, ignoring somebody walking down the street, ranting and raving, mental health issue, and you just sit there and watch, that's not compassion. That's just ignoring. I feel like that's where we're at. We're ignoring. We're not being compassionate. There are people that can be helped. There are people that want to be helped. And then there are people that no matter what you do, they're going to be on the street. But we can't ignore those other two groups.
Yeah, well, and the people that want to be on the street, they still can be. They can be a disruption to the rest of the public.
Sure can. So you got to have a plan to address that. You got to have the services in place. You got to have everybody talking to each other. There's a lot of great services out there. I'm just not sure everybody's talking to each other.
Yeah, and now with the technology, it should be central. Like, we shouldn't be siloed in any area of communication.
No. So that's the thing. At the end of 4 years, what have we done there? A mayor can't control the economy. I'd like to think that the supply and demand issue, the economic climate maybe changes a little bit, and things start to become more affordable. Historically, when you look at it, it's a roller coaster. Certainly, you're in real estate. Prices go up, prices go down.
Yep. It's
all about the market. So I'd like to see it. What has the city done to help at the end of 4 years? What did we do that maybe made it easier for younger people to afford to live here? And again, we don't control construction costs. We don't control insurance. We don't control property, values. There's so many things that the city can't control that make it difficult on that affordability issue.
So let's talk about the economic impact that maybe could be had, right? So just a few weeks ago, Mayor Welsh endorsed the Blake Investment Partners project for the 86 acres, giving 58 acres to them for $275 million. Huge project, going to have a huge impact on the city in the future. Do you continue to support that plan?
I do not.
And so what would be your plan?
It's not anything against Blake Whitney, because I saw all the presentations. They have some great things in their presentation. So does Ark Ellison have some great things in their presentation. And, Foundation Vision Foundation, Will Conroy's plan, his makes the most sense to me still, even after talking to some of the developers, only because I feel that tract of land has a value far more than what you just mentioned if it's done right. And I also feel the city doesn't have anybody to oversee such a endeavor. So when you look at Will Conroy's plan on the surface, where they manage the development, the city maintains ownership, reaps the benefit in the revenue side of selling that off parcel by parcel under a master plan, though. You can't just, hey, we're going to throw a hotel up this month.
Right.
And we'll see what we want to do next. Yep. So, but the ability, you're talking about borrowing $600 million, underselling that, when you might not have to borrow anything if you do it right. You get enough revenue in to work on infrastructure every year, because we're talking years. It's going to be long past 4 years before, So that's where I want to be. Is there a possibility that we take something from each of those proposals? Absolutely. So that those developers contribute their ideas that really make sense.
Yeah.
But but it has to be strategic. We don't want to throw, for example, you don't want to throw some competing businesses on that property to the Edge District or Central Avenue. I hadn't thought about that, but that was presented to me in one of my meetings that there's a lot of businesses that are struggling along Central Avenue, and let's just say in the development plan there's competing businesses. That just doesn't make sense. So it has to be very strategic, and I just don't think. I think it's been more of an agenda driven versus what's the best for the city as a whole, while continuing while including respect for the historic gas plant district in some form or fashion.
Yeah, I think this whole thing has been very frustrating for me because I've been asked to speak on the news about it numerous times.
Oh, really?
I've done multiple podcasts about it with different people, and I'm deep in the research to know that this election was kind of just smoke and mirrors for this election that's going on right now, because the city council doesn't even vote on it until next summer. And I'm really having some empathy for the developers that are spending so much money on these proposals to put these together just to be yanked back and forth for it. And I think it was kind of, my personal opinion is a little careless for Mayor Welsh to push this through knowing that the election is going on and not wait until after the next person's selected so we could actually vote on it, because no one I've talked to now says, oh yeah, no, we're just going to keep that one going. So unless Mayor Welsh wins, everyone's going back to the drawing boards again, which costs hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it just is jerking the public along with these fake headlines that say, oh, there was a plan selected. Until city council votes on it, it shouldn't be this whole big thing, in my opinion, because this has gone on now for so many years through now multiple mayors. And so, like, as someone to just the public who's like, what the hell is going on? It's kind of frustrating. And
absolutely.
And so I do think that the mayor, I'm going to push back a little bit. I think the mayor does have a huge economic impact on the city of St. Pete going forward because of this project.
Absolutely. I don't disagree with that. When I say that the mayor doesn't have...
I get it on the housing supply and affordability and all that.
On this, 100%.
This is massive.
The mayor and the council.
Yes.
This is, and that's why I think... the mayor said there's been plan after plan after plan. I don't disagree with him on that. There has. And like you said, it's cost a lot of people a lot of money. But there were curveballs, obviously. That's not the mayor's fault. I'm not going to blame him for that. But I think his passion for to get something done is maybe created a little bit of a blind spot for him. Pushing it through, knowing that everything's kind of up in the air. One of the big things for me, the Rays. Okay, they're not mentioned in this. It's basically kind of assumed they're gone. The Rays are gone. We're going to move forward. Well, they're not gone. They have renderings. They have MOUs. What they don't have is money. And what happens if they can't get a deal over there? They might move to Orlando. I don't think so. Not if you know how Major League Baseball works. Those owners aren't going to approve a move where they don't get any franchise fees.
Right.
They want 2 new teams. They want that, millions in franchise fees. There's a lot of factors that play into that. I went to opening day this year. We have a very nice stadium. That money that was put back in after, which the city was obligated to do. I know that looks bad too. We reduced insurance. We had to spend all this money. Okay, they were locked in by the way the contract was. We can't. That's water under the bridge.
Right.
What we have is a beautiful stadium that's smart for baseball in Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah. Talk to the people that went to Yankees' little stadium over there last season.
Yeah, out in the heat.
Oh, yeah. Brutal. Rain delays. I guess they didn't have a single rain out, but they had some significant rain delays. So anyway. Part of the plan has to be the consideration that maybe we could still keep the Rays, but that's been thrown to the side. So there's so much. That's just one little tentacle.
I think that there's a lot of relationship. Like if there's one thing I've learned is businesses relationships.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of things that aren't covered in the media about the relationships and personal relationships that are going on. And maybe some individuals just don't like each other and they can't come to an agreement at a table and they can't sit down and have a dinner together.
Sure.
And that's where business happens.
Yep.
And so, I would, what would you do? Would you approach the owners of the Rays to see if there's
Absolutely
what's going on under the hood?
Absolutely. I would talk to them about what's your fallback. Right off the bat, what's your fallback if this doesn't work? You haven't said it. You've said we have to have the 100 acres and all. No, you don't. That was convenient to say St. Pete's not the right spot. And you have a lot of people saying, oh, this is great going to Tampa. Most of them are from Tampa.
Right.
You have a lot of people saying it's terrible, we're losing baseball. That's mostly St. Pete.
Yeah.
I think is there a bigger fan base? I don't know. It might be in Tampa. Obviously, they have an opportunity to have a bigger fan base. And there's a bigger, here's the real kicker, I think, is there's a bigger commercial support, money up on the wall, so to speak, in Tampa. But the reality is that TV contract's very lucrative. I don't know how much that company support really means in the scheme of things, but I know it all plays in. But absolutely, I would want to sit down and say, what's your fallback? Let's talk about that, because we have a vested interest in it. And we actually have, in my opinion, we have some leverage, because you have to have a place to play.
Yeah.
And we have a very nice place for you to play. It's worked for many years. It just was renovated to the hilt. I haven't been very vocal about it. I know that Charlie Crist has been, I'm going to, either trade them for the Bucks or keep the Rays, and
But it all goes back to the good headlines, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't I don't promise like going to lower the millage. No, councils lower the millage. They have to vote on it. You can't promise people you're going to put $15 million back in their pocket.
Right.
You can't. Do you have 8 council members that agree with you? No, not yet. But anyway, your answer to your question, I would absolutely want to sit down with them.
Yeah. No, that 86 acres is, what a headline, and it's just been back and forth. I don't think anyone should believe any of the headlines until there's a vote and a shovel in the ground. That's just, I think we really need to be cautious of that, and it's been kind of carelessly taken care of. You
being in real estate, let's just say that the Rays did leave, and ultimately we had to tear down a perfectly good stadium. So you put infrastructure in, streets, sidewalks. You know yourself that the value of every parcel goes up tremendously when you do that, tremendously.
Yeah, once you have infrastructure in place.
Yeah, it's a $1 billion tract of land if it's a nickel.
Yeah, no, it's wild, and there's so much things happening in the South right now in terms of new development as well, which I won't pull back the cover on all that, but there's a lot of opportunity right now south of Central, including, and that project has a lot to do with it. Now, no matter what happens, it will help all property values around it, which some will say is good, some will say is bad, right? It depends on where you're at and all that.
Well, my thing is that it needs to help the whole city, from a revenue standpoint.
Yeah. And one thing we don't talk about enough is, like, our city is a freaking amazing. Like St. Pete is so incredible. Like it's blown up for a reason. For going from a place where you just said it was a place of bedrooms before and to now to where it's a hustling and bustling, and people have moved here in droves over the last few years.
Well, when you talk about that, what I've seen is a change. So I can tell you that when the Moss Brothers closed downtown, that was our anchor of downtown. A big department store, had a cafeteria, had a bargain basement.
Where was this?
It was right there. Let me think about where I'm at. Where Duke Energy Building is.
Okay.
Yeah, it was that block.
Okay, got it.
And they had a furniture store.
Okay.
We're over where the side where St. Pete College is, there was a furniture store. But when it closed, downtown was dead. You could drive around downtown and maybe see 5 people in 10 blocks. Look at it today, you see 5 people in 10 feet. I was a district chief when that happened, and I would drive around trying to pre-plan when these vacant buildings would catch fire and 2 o'clock in the morning, and what was going to be our strategy, make sure we get nobody hurt, in a vacant building, because those are risky. You don't know what's going on inside. You don't know if there's holes in the floor, all kinds of things. But anyway, to see that turnaround is amazing. And, it started years ago, but, it's been, it has been amazing. It's booming. The only concern I have is how fast we've done it versus, like I say, we've outpaced. I use this saying several times. We're putting tomorrow's development on yesterday's infrastructure. Mm-hmm. That's one of the big concerns. It's been great, and again, when you look at the surface and what's going on, wow. But what's underneath?
Yeah.
And I say that in a very metaphoric.
Has anything? Okay, so let's get into that a little bit because it goes back to the storms, right? So everyone's saying about infrastructure. What is things that have happened for us to be like, okay, this is the reason why we're concerned about infrastructure, or is it just a fugazi? I'm kind of just playing devil's advocate here a little bit, but what has happened, or has anything happened for us to be like, okay, this is why there's an infrastructure problem?
Well, I think, again, back to the basics. It's just been ignoring street maintenance, ignoring replacing aged sewer lines. That's the basics of it. Now, you throw on top of the increased flooding that we've had, but, it's hard to tell where we'd be had we not ignored it because you don't have anything to compare it to. We know that rainfall is much greater in a 20-minute period than it used to be. I mean, that's been scientifically proven. It's not about the whole, I don't get into the politics of climate change and what we're causing and all that. My theory on that is the climate's been changing since the dawn of man.
I agree with you. That's science.
Yeah, we had an ice age.
The Earth's temperature changes. Period.
Yeah, and so the other part of that is the flooding. We had a 100-year storm, allegedly, hopefully. That's what they called it, a 100-year storm. So hopefully do another 100 years. So we had far more flooding than we've ever had. The reality is, though, without that storm, we've had flooding since I was a kid. My parents' house flooded twice while I was growing up there, and flooded again after I moved out. And and that's over 50 years ago. Shore acres has always been an issue. It's a little bit more of an issue now. I was out there yesterday, and high tide, very high tide. The streets were flooded. Some of them very, very
full moon, high tide.
Yeah. So, there's things the city can do that maybe should have been done all along. That's the part I'm saying. That's what I see about infrastructure. This should be no surprise. We've known Shore Acres has flooded for years. We've known other parts of the city have flooded for years, but we didn't really address it until a 100-year storm hit and more people got flooded. That's the part that bothers me and I saw it for 50 years. City government in general is reactive.
So we can't just blame this on the current mayor.
No.
Right. This has been an ongoing problem.
Yeah. Now, he has to take some responsibility. You look at his first 4 years, how much did you see of projects being done on some of the infrastructure things? I would argue not much. Once there was close to re-election year and then post Helene and Milton, we're seeing a lot of things get done. That's.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, right? Because it's like people don't want to. This is just human behavior, right? I go to we sometimes like go, oh well, this should have happened because of course something would have happened eventually, but until it does, and we don't. And to go to an extreme example, we didn't have airport security until 9/11, right? To the extent that we do, like it does take dramatic events to happen for human behavior to create change.
The fire code's a great example. Fire code gets rewritten every 3 years, and it's reactive code, 100%. So when something happens you go back, remember the nightclub fire up in, was it Connecticut or Rhode Island, somewhere up there? I don't remember exactly where. The people got blocked in the door.
Yes. There was a military training that we learned about how to file out of a room.
I think the band was White Snake or something.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
And the material on the wall caught fire.
Yep.
And a lot of people died. Well, there was a big code rewrite because, we got to protect people all over the country. So that's, it's reactive because it's very hard to predict, I guess. But back to what I was saying earlier, I've known since I was a 12-year-old kid that flooding happens here in St. Pete. What was being done about that is what I'm saying is there's something you can be proactive about.
Yeah.
But we weren't. We were proactive about getting some high-rises built that are not affordable. I went down and visited a showroom for one of the towers coming up, and I won't say their name, but people will figure it out. And I was looking, and I asked the price. They have a studio on every floor. There's one studio facing the street. It doesn't have a great view or anything. And it's less than 400 square feet. It's 300 and something square feet. It's $640,000.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Oh, yeah. I know every building here.
Yeah. but that's...
I'm curious to see what happens with that project.
Yeah.
Well, it's okay. So my counter to that would be, okay, to the infrastructure of flooding, there's no profitability in that unless you find a way to charge people to protect their homes, right? And so private money coming in and the city goes, okay, there's tax dollars to be made, which then could help maybe said infrastructure issue, but what then goes to, are those monies being used for that?
Back to gas plant district. You start selling off those parcels, there's money to be
and what's the engineering or that things that need to be done to actually, Shore Acres is a bowl.
Should have probably never been built on.
Yeah, right. So it's like unless there's some huge grant that forces everyone to raise their home in the streets, like it's not like. And what's so cool about Shore Acres? That community back there is so resilient. It's almost like the flooding has made them stronger together. In like a trauma bonding kind of way, and I don't wish that on anyone. And I know I have many friends that live back in Shore Acres that have gone through it, but those that are like, no, we're not leaving, we're staying. Some people have left.
Yeah,
so there's two sides of that coin. Not saying that you want that to continue to happen, but I'm really like I feel like the solution is just don't live there.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you. I think again the city can do some backflow preventers, upgrades, pumping station, but that's for the everyday, rainfall and tides and stuff, But when you have a hurricane coming, and like I use this, it's a visual, but if you live here and the tide is here, I don't care what the city does, or how much money they spend.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's not going to change.
Yeah, unless you're spending billions. The only place you could go is you could look at Venice, Italy, and the lock system that they built to prevent Venice from going underwater, which is billions of dollars.
Not practical.
Yeah.
And so the reality is don't sell a false hope. Be honest and straight up and say this is what we can do, and this is the level which it'll have an impact. But beyond that, again, you got to make some choices. Now, talking about elevating your homes versus, I went to a grand opening a couple months ago, probably several months ago now, that Dammit Defense down on.
Yes, they've been here. Great guys.
That's a great system.
Yeah, and they travel the world to test it. They're storm chasers now, installing their systems to see how well it works.
And that's a lot cheaper than elevating your house.
Yeah.
And if it gets over that, oh well. I mean, if it gets over your Dammit defense system, I might have water at my house, and I'm 35 feet above sea level.
Right,
you know what I mean? So, again, having those honest conversations, looking for solutions like that. Maybe we could campaign for grants to put the Dammit defense in, because you could do how many houses for the cost of raising one house? You could do a lot. I mean,
let's remember, Meg. We need to have those guys on. I want to talk to them. Yeah.
Great guys. You're right. I met with them.
Yeah. Okay, so I agree on all this. It is, I think, what I like about you so far, Jim, is that you're very honest.
Oh, well, thank you.
I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
Back to this talking storm stuff, because people were so irritated with the amount of debris that was still on their front yard for a while. Do you feel like that was handled correctly? And if not, how could it have been handled differently?
Okay, yeah. No, I don't feel like it was handled 100% correctly. Now, again, I'm going to give the credit to the fact that this was an unprecedented event for St. Pete. So, but there were terms like this is secondhand from insiders, that I mean, I know a ton of people, that we were going to strive for an equitable recovery, if that makes sense. We're going to pick up different parts of the city and stuff. So the first thing you have is your outside resources are challenged because it wasn't a St. Pete event. It was a Florida event. And so the demand was high for recovery resources. The city did have a lot of city employees working, trucks out and everything like that. But the big concern for me, my daughter was affected tremendously. She had all new furniture, lived in Shore Acres, a condo out there. She got 3.5 feet of heavily sewage, salt water. and her stuff sat on the curb for 2 months. Now, here's the problem that I have. Communication, number one, but number two, prioritization. So sewage-soaked personal belongings sitting on the curb have two public health issues, mental and physical. Tree limbs from Milton, which was a high wind event, we were very blessed that it was a high wind. So we didn't have roofing materials all over. We didn't have the debris blown all over, but we had trees down. A lot of tree limbs and stuff. They don't have the same health hazard. Yeah, you're going to get some rats and stuff, but in general, sewage is far more, risky. So my opinion, there should have been a really concentrated effort to have a prioritized schedule of how you're going to pick up the sewage soaked belongings, and also for the mental health aspect. And every single day you would be out front saying, okay, let's say we started Coquina Key. We completed this many blocks of Coquina Key. Tomorrow we're going to complete. So people know, okay, I'm still, quite a ways away, or I'm next up, or whatever. Because people were spending $2,000 and $3,000 of their own money to have this stuff hauled away after waiting for a month and a half and everything. So communication would be key, prioritization. I wouldn't pick up the first tree limb until I picked up every personal belonging and health hazard off the street. Then I'd start on the tree limbs. But the public would know every day why, where, what, who, all those things. There were some great things. I mean, this hometown haulers, they got an award for that. I do have some questions on it. There was a lot of money spent. I'm not opposed to it, but how were people selected? How much did they get? There's a lot of questions when you're spending taxpayers' dollars for something like that. But the one thing that really struck me, so the storm has passed. It's a couple weeks later. Mangrove Golf Course is open. I like to golf. A couple guys called and said, hey, we've all been dealing with let's go play golf. So we're on the golf course, and a city dump truck is on the golf course with 4 or 5 guys walking behind it, and they're trimming trees. Now, they've already picked up, that's how they got open, a lot of it. But they're trimming trees and throwing them in the back of the dump truck. Now, I'm not opposed to whatever the job had to do, but I'm looking across 62nd Avenue at personal belongings piled up still. And that really bothered me. Mm-hmm. I'd rather see that truck and those people throwing that stuff in the truck.
Was it a private truck or a city truck?
No, a city truck. And it's a dump truck. Right. It can haul that. The city has dump trucks. That, they have grabbers, grapple trucks. Yep. Also, this is not – so my thing is communication and prioritization. Yep. That's what I would have done different. Yeah. Now, nobody in administration has the experience of having that
emergency response.
Yeah, and having back-to-back storms, unprecedented. I get that. So I'm not trying to
what is it that Tampa did different over, because that's what, comparison is a thief of joy, but we had, another city across the bridge that we're looking at going, oh, but it seems like they got their stuff cleaned up a lot faster.
I honestly haven't looked at that. Yeah. But I did hear that. I've heard Tampa did much better. Tampa did, and we've been saying we did really good because we got the FEMA reimbursement and everything, the 90 days. But that's another problem, I think. Yes, it's nice to get the money back, but that should not be the goal. Right. The goal is to mitigate. Yeah. If we make the 90 days, great. But if we don't, it's not going to be the end of the world. I mean, yes, it's money, but again, you fight that battle after the fact, after you've mitigated the hazard to your citizens. But then to take it another step further, what I was going to say, when Andrew hit down south and leveled everything, it was really a learning experience for the fire service. Everybody wanted to help. So it was disorganized because of the influx of resources. Mm-hmm. You had the Miami Metro-Dade Fire Department people were victims as well as trying to be rescuers.
Heroes, right? Yeah.
They couldn't even tell you what road it was because neighborhoods were leveled by Andrew. And they'd say, I think this is my street, but I'm not sure. So the fire service got together and created a thing called SERP. It's a statewide emergency response plan. So every department provided the state a list of the resources that they would have to help if a storm came. And from that, the state would coordinate. So if Miami got hit, we're going to pull from departments up here to come in. You get a task number. It's very organized. I feel that cities should adopt something similar. If we get hit here, what resources can Orlando provide to us if they don't get hit? or Miami provide to us if they don't get hit in the form of dump trucks, grapple trucks, whatever we need. Let's do that. Let's build a statewide emergency city plan.
That seems very doable.
Yeah, so I would think so too. So that's one of the goals.
That's what happens. You look at all the linesmen that come in. Where they come from all over. Same thing.
And I don't know why, and maybe there's some mutual aid agreements I'm not aware of, but I haven't heard of any. I think it's time that we really sit down with the different mayors and different administrations of cities and come up with a plan for the state of Florida that can be a resource deployment plan.
Yeah, there's a lot of things, Jim. I'm curious since you well, yeah, that's yours.
Okay.
Yeah. One, thanks for your transparency on everything so far, and I know we're in the weeds for everyone listening, and there's a lot of issues to cover, but tell me about some things you've experienced now, like throwing your hat in the ring, right? You're doing a lot of press, you got a lot of things to go to, luckily you're retired, right? So it's like you got the time to do all this, but how has life changed for you over these last few months?
Oh, well, I've never ran a campaign. I've never been on a campaign. Like I said, I'm not a politician, so I'm not seeking political office. I am now, and what I think the biggest surprise for me is it's full time. It's all day, every day. But it's rewarding in the people I meet. I've met you at an event. I've met so many people and have great conversations. Don't always agree on what the city needs, doesn't need. But just to, for me being a social guy, that's been a really, really good part of it. I jokingly say the hours are long and the pay's not that great, but it's been fun. It's also been trying from trying to juggle it all and learn and everything from fundraising and the rules that are tied to that and the reporting and how is it with signs and should I have signs and should I do TV and just mailers and learning so much about the ins and outs of a campaign. I could say to anybody, why in the world would you want to be a politician? But the thing is, it's the people that you meet, the conversations you have, and the fact that it's not hyperbole, as they say, that I say I love St. Pete. I mean, it's provided so much for me and my family.
Yeah.
And just to be able to hopefully give some back, and I want my kids to be sitting here 30, 40 years from now saying I love St. Pete. Here's why, and So
yeah, the impact you made. So when you're not, prior to running for this, running for mayor, how did you enjoy the city?
So, for me, I like to golf, and I think we have one of the finest municipal golf courses of any city. Mangrove is
love Mangrove.
It's great. It's great. So I do like to golf. I like the downtown. We have e-bikes. And we're responsible e-bike drivers for those people listening. I've heard a lot of complaints about
because people are zooming so fast.
Yeah,
and all that.
I've heard a lot. But so we'll ride downtown on the bikes and go to a local restaurant. We like mixing it up for breakfast. We go to Taylor Sam's. We'll go to the Hangar. We'll go to the Central Cafe.
Mm-hmm. I love breakfast.
Yeah, that's my favorite meal.
Mine too.
But then at night we often go down. Like my wife's favorite place is Bella Brava. But we got Park Shore. You got a lot of great places. So we like the downtown. Sometimes we'll walk Coffee Pot. There's an area around what is that? It's south of the pool, the seawall there. Mm-hmm. For some reason. There's dolphins are always there.
And there's two baby dolphins.
There's two baby dolphins right now.
Yeah.
And so we like to walk down there. It's just a nice laid back kind of and yet busy at the same time. But you have so much opportunity to Friday night's pizza night for us, and
Where are you going for pizza?
We mix that up. We go Colony Grill, if you like a small thin hot oil. Paisanos is my number one go-to out on 4th Street, about 60th.
Okay.
Really good. Little Italy, 49th Street, Distant Plaza. And what's the other one we go to? Everyone, Fabrica, right near Colony Grill.
Yep.
So we like to do that, and it's just social time. You see people you know, and so those are the things that I like to do.
Yeah, you're enjoying the food scene of St. Pete.
The food scene mainly, and then the golf. Right now, I mean, I don't have the time to play, but I did play one time about 2 weeks ago, and it's just brutally hot.
It's brutally hot. This is not golf season.
No, and we teed off in the morning, and by 11 o'clock, I didn't have a dry stitch on me.
Oh, yeah, no, it's so hot. I tell my buddies, no, you can catch me in the fall, winter. Yeah. That's when I'll be out there.
So we knock on doors, So
you're door knocking.
Oh yeah, door knocking I got one coming up this Saturday. We did last Saturday, and that might be the hottest Saturday I've ever door knocked.
This past Saturday?
Yeah,
it was very hot.
It was absolutely. But again, I had so many good conversations with people.
Yeah, what are you hearing from from the public?
Well, there's a lot of frustration. Mm-hmm. There really is.
Does anyone say, "I'm just so happy"? Because I feel like,
no.
I'm going to like a thing like who's most likely to leave a review? The customer that wants to complain,
Sure.
So I'm just going from that. Like I'm just thinking, is there any city out there where someone's just like, I'm just thrilled?
Yeah. I do get a lot of positive comments about the city. Well, we really like this, we really like that. But I also get comments like, we never go downtown, and I'll just say, why not? There's some great. Well, the parking's terrible. I hear that a lot. Parking's terrible.
Okay.
It's crowded. It's not for us.
Well, those aren't downtown people.
Right. Exactly.
I have little empathy for that. I moved here from Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. You don't drive because it's not that parking is difficult. There is no parking.
Right.
So, but I get for people who haven't moved from a big city to then stay out in the burbs a little bit. But okay, I hear you.
Yep.
I hear you.
So, I hear about infrastructure a lot. I hear about permitting a lot.
Yes.
And I hear about e-bikes a lot. I hear about the Sunrunner a lot.
Yeah. What are the thoughts on the Sunrunner?
It
has a nickname, but I'm not going to say.
Yeah, I've only had one person that said, I love it. I love the Sunrunner. Everybody else has been kind of anti-Sunrunner. And have a mixed bag. I like the bike paths. Other people are like, I can't believe they put a bike path on MLK. Now traffic's backed up, and so back to what we were talking about much earlier. You have this. You just said nobody drives in Philadelphia, so it's an urban lifestyle that we have a generation that's pushing for something like that, and then you have a generation that's pushing against something like that. That's a reality, and so it makes it very difficult to try to figure out how you're going to balance that. But that's a challenge that I think this city has. You can't ignore it.
No, I agree, and I think going back to the development of the 86 acres, that's a huge thing where you can make it more, or less, more walkable, less car traffic and things like that.
Yeah.
No, I see all that. I think there's one thing that people love about the downtown is that it is the walkability of it.
Yeah. So, one of the things that I want to really work for is to get jobs here that are, I use Dynasty as an example. Are you familiar with Dynasty? They moved down from Manhattan.
Okay.
They moved into the 200 with about 40 but 40 employees they brought down. They're tripled in size, and they're going to be relocating. They're building out the office buildings attached to 400 Central. They took all the floors. They've grown, and they pay decent. And so those are the people that can live, work, and play downtown, hopefully. But we don't have a lot of that. Right. We need to attract more of that.
Do you know Mike Sweezy?
Mike Sweezy, that name's very familiar.
He's a part of economic growth for.
Oh yes. I did meet Mike. He was at the groundbreaking.
Yes.
I see him walking in and out of 200 all the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's his job, right? Is to recruit companies to St. Pete.
Right.
So I've heard we need more, and I have a lot of my agents, actually commercial guys, are looking. I think a lot of commercial developments happening and space available out in the Edge District, past the Edge District, and the Warehouse Arts District, for some more office space. But that is something we're limited on.
Right. We have a less than we have single digit vacancy in office space, which is unheard of. I'm told. I'm not in real estate, but.
There's not many places to go, and in the places that are, because we're looking to move this office at one point, and we were limited on options. We only had one new construction option, and the other spots were just a little bit older, and so we definitely could use some more space. But I think a lot of developers, right, going back to private money, was very scared, and still is a little bit because of COVID. But I think from a human standpoint, I love people watching, Jim. That's one of my favorite things to do. I love human behavior, and I'm really watching how AI and things are taking over. And I think that the next wave generation, I'm in the process of hiring a position. I'm talking to a lot of college graduates right now. They don't like AI. And they want to come into a workplace. They don't want to work from home. They want a place that they can come and have culture and have face-to-face interaction with. So I think we're going to have a shift back to where they're going to think, wow, can you imagine that people were so isolated in their homes after the pandemic?
There's a tremendous loss there in social skills, everything else that I'm glad to hear you say that, because it's really a shift back to, like you say, what people like me believe in and enjoy. My wife had to work from home. She was with Allstate for 30 some odd years, and COVID actually ended up. She retired a couple of years early because of COVID, and here's what happened. So she taught new agents with Allstate. She was a licensed agent and everything, but she taught agents in a classroom setting. Well, when COVID hit, they said, we're going to do it over Zoom. So she was working from home. She was miserable. She didn't have she didn't go to the lunchroom and sit down with her friends and stuff like that. And at the end of COVID, we're not bringing you back to the office because we can do this by Zoom from home office in outside of Chicago. If you want to move to Chicago, fine. If not, we'll offer you an early retirement. Well, we weren't moving to Chicago, so she took early retirement, which was they treated her very well. After 30-something years, they gave her a whole year pay and benefits, which was phenomenal. But she technically retired several years earlier than she planned. It worked out perfect for us. Sometimes you don't see the plan because her mom needs some care, and she's available now. So anyway. That working from home is just not something that I would enjoy.
No, and that's why I'm putting this out there, and I want to make sure that this, for and they're aware. A lot of the concepts right now involve some Class A office space with condominiums or a blend of a hotel condo concept with a little bit of office. So they're looking at that, but I think it's I think there's going to be a cultural shift in the next generation that comes up that wants more human interaction.
Well, thank goodness.
Well, because we're swinging so hard. Even COVID accelerated it in the pandemic, and now with the new AI, it does, right? People are like, no, we want to know that you're real and that I'm not talking to a robot.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, I don't know a lot about the cost associated, but my understanding is to develop office space is more costly. As far as getting the capital and it's more trying.
Well, it's harder to lend. The banks are less likely to lend on it.
Yeah, there you go.
It's harder to get money.
Yeah,
because
that's a problem. But we need more office. They're going to tear down the old Damaged Times building, which was office space, and my understanding is apartments are going up there.
I did hear that. Yeah, hopefully there's going to be some office attached. I see the plans for that, so I'll have to look.
Well, they may not even have decided 100%.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah. What a wild thing that crane fell over.
Wild. Yeah.
So about someone missed a step in the checklist, right?
Yeah. Well, they said that they didn't have enough time. Well, I don't know. I'd have to go back and really look at all that.
Yeah.
And then the Hilton's selling to the Coulter Group. What are they going to do? I've heard luxury condos. I've heard mixed hotel/condos. I would hope that it. If it's luxury condos, we lose valuable meeting space, we lose hospitality, tourism, and we lose jobs. That's not a road to success.
Yeah, see what they do. They've been very successful with their projects. Their projects are very nice. I do right now. I love that line. Building tomorrow. What was the line? You said building tomorrow.
You can't put tomorrow's development on
tomorrow's development on yesterday's infrastructure. They're developing for what they predict things will look like 4 or 5 years from now. At the moment, I would just say from it, like there's a lot of inventory of luxury condos on the market right now, and so it's really crazy to me when I hear of like new towers going up because I'm like, man, we already have. It's not that I like the development. I think if we're going to change, we need to change in that direction, and it's inevitable. At the same time, it's like we may be putting up housing for people that are not here yet, and I don't know if that influx is still coming in the waves that it was before.
You said something earlier when we were talking about the other one with the studios.
Yeah,
you said, "Well, we'll see."
We'll see. I've met the developers of that project. I've talked to them a little bit at length. I gave some very like you. I'm very direct and honest with my feedback. They didn't love that very much. We'll see if how St. Pete reacts to that project, that product. Right. I don't know that we're not New York. We want more square footage than that. It's a very nice project.
No, it is. The amenities, everything. Yeah, I looked at all
the quality, the design. There's some questions of where the money comes from. There's a lot of blah, 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 like just nonsense around it. But we'll see. I just drove by it yesterday. It looks like they are starting to do some infrastructure and foundational things. But I know it's not going as quickly as they had hoped. Yeah. So we'll leave that there without calling them out.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Jim, have we touched? Let me back. What have we not covered that you want people to know about you and running?
Well, we've covered a lot, and I think the big thing is we've already discussed it is, I'm a career public servant. I have a passion for public service. I want to make a difference in our city, and I want to serve everybody, not just one neighborhood or one section of the city. I believe that everybody deserves the same core services equally, fairly. And
here's a guy. I just got this question, and we'll wrap up. Give me the quick hits from your 50 years in public service and from being a fire chief for 18 years. What have you learned about leadership? Because that was the first thing you said. You said the city needs leadership, and I can respect that. I lead 220 agents in the office here,
good.
and prior military, and I read on leadership. I study it at a level. So tell me, what wisdom can you share?
Well, the first thing about leadership, and this is one thing that I say frequently in my campaign. So you hear people say all the time, do the right thing when nobody's looking. That's integrity, okay? Do the right thing when everybody's looking. That's leadership. Okay, now the other part of leadership that I've learned is it's a work in progress. Don't ever think you're done. I'm a leader now. No, you're a work in progress. You're leading. But people say, how did you last 18 years as a fire chief? It's called you evolve, you grow. When I first the way I led the department, say from 06 to pick 09, is totally different than the way I led from, say, 21 to 24 because of a multitude of factors, whether, just the environment, the culture, the economics, everything like that. And I also witnessed it throughout my career. So when I came on, there were no female firefighters, and there were only we just did a thing. I say we, I didn't. I attended a thing recently called the Legacy 6. The first 6 black firefighters were recognized. I was there watching that and what they went through and what leadership needed to address and handle and things. So you evolve with the situation. The biggest eye-opener for me as I became chief was when I first made it, we had baby boomers, and I don't remember which generation was next, but we basically had 2 generations on the job. When I left, we had 5 generations on. Well, I think when I left, we dropped off 1 generation because I think I was the only baby boomer left on the job. But anyway, when you have, because culturally, backgrounds, everything about them is different in those generations. Some are, we know there's a generation that can rip your computer apart and put it back together in 10 minutes. But when you ask them to go grab the crescent wrench, they look at you and say, what's a crescent wrench?
Right.
So I learned, instead of getting mad because, I had officers say that, you're hiring these guys that don't know anything. What are you doing to us? And I said, I'm hiring the best that are out there, and it's now become your job as a leader to make them better. And that's a real challenge. We didn't have to, used to be ex-military. When I came on, everybody was ex-military. And, they had mechanical aptitude. My dad took me out when I was like 14 and said, here's how you change plugs, here's how you change the oil. I'd take my son out, lift the hood and say, you plug the computer right in here and it tells you what's wrong with it, and this is how you write a check. Because you can't work on this stuff.
No, you can't.
But so leadership is a work in progress as you evaluate the landscape and you recognize the change in the culture, and you don't get mad because they're not what you think they should be. You recognize, how are we going to address that? Because we need firefighters, and just because they don't have mechanical aptitude, it's harder. We got to teach them mechanical aptitude. In many cases, you've got to teach them common sense, and that sounds
street
funny.
Smarts.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, my leadership point is that you're always growing, you're always paying attention. And you need to be flexible, very flexible, and you need to be open. And then back to what we were talking about earlier, you recognize you don't know it all, so you recognize the value of having the right people around you, and recognizing their talent and relying on that talent and incorporating that into your decision making, because you don't have all the right answers, but you have the responsibility to come up with them.
Yes, I think that's probably the hardest part of being mayor of a city, right? Or any leadership position is what are the right answers.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Jim, it's been a pleasure.
No, absolutely.
We could keep going forever,
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
sure.
no, I could.
Where can people learn more about you and everything that you stand on?
Well, I do have a website. It's jimlargeformayor.com. And you can go there, and my 30, 60, 90s there. There's a little bit of newspaper articles. There's my endorsements. There's a little bit of my history. There's also information there, my phone number, my email. I do answer the phone if people have questions. Tonight we're going to actually do a teletown hall. We've had that planned for about a week and a half. Never done one of those, so
that'll be interesting.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. But just go to my website, and I want people to know they have a choice. If there's 6 of us, everybody brings something different to the table, and I close with, nobody brings what I bring.
Yeah. Appreciate that. Go out and vote. I think voting is
August 18th.
August 18th.
Yep.
August 18th.
Yep. And I'll leave you with my campaign slogan: your vote is big, vote large.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate you.
Yep, absolutely.